this means this must be an actual show that we're about to do. It is the Kids on the Escalator Tuesday night edition. We were going to try to go last night, but anyways, foiled by the force. And here we are on Tuesday night, returning with our well, I don't know, the guy, he's got residence now in the dorm.
Look at him go.
Mike Pongratz, along for the ride.
Thank you.
Here we are, and joined this week by the hot take master here. You got JJ from the JJ and Mel Unfiltered show on the Dean Blundell Network. JJ, what's up, buddy?
Hey guys, nice to be here. Thanks for having me. It's my first official real nerd chat of the new year. So
there you go.
I appreciate it.
How many do you normally do? Like, what's your nerd chat weekly ratio that wasn't like last year?
I'll be honest, 2020 was not a good year for nerd chat.
No, so you got to take it up a notch.
Yeah. So I'm, normally I'm all about it all the time, to nauseum. But let's get into it, man. Let's get into it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we lots going on in the Marvel universe. We thought we'd kind of roll through a whole bunch of Marvel news and a bunch of other things. Chris Machete up there, hot off the heels of Skeletron release.
Yeah.
Speaking of comic books and all that kind of stuff.
I was also hanging out with the Rad Nerd Dad today, right?
Oh, Joe Williamson.
Yes, I was. I visited with Joe today. I had a nice chat with him. Give him a little bit of a plug there. Let's plug Joe for a minute.
Hey, Joe. Plug him?
Yeah, let's give Joe a plug right now. You ready? Everybody, we'll do it
on the count of what? On the count of something. Well, you were on the show today.
Yeah,
that
nerd dad.
1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, go. Is that how they do it in radio?
I don't know. I'm just trying to decide: is this a 1, 2, 3 go, or do we go on 3? And what are we saying?
Gang plug.
Exactly.
It's done. We already did it.
Hey, Joe.
Where were you?
We were in and out. That was quick. That was a quick plug.
There's other nerds on this network, not just us. But JJ,
Right.
I heard you like talking stuff. I know when you came onto the Blundell Network, there was a bit of chat about that world, and I don't see you getting into it very much. So we thought, let's bring you on here because we had you on our Christmas extravaganza.
Yeah.
And with your top 3 Christmas movies, but we wanted to give you more than 2 minutes. So
I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate it.
So
I'm so psyched. I'm so psyched that JJ's here because we have history, which is awesome.
We do have history.
What is the history here? What's the history?
History is we worked together at a radio station back in 2004. I'm actually, in honor of it, I'm drinking out of my 91.5 The Beat Beattoberfest. Hip Hop Toberfest is what it was. But JJ, and I mentioned this on the podcast before, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for JJ, because
What?
Yeah, dude. I thought I've told this story before to you, but JJ was the beacon. He was the guy who got me on the path of doing what I'm doing for a living now, way back when.
Very cool.
He hooked me up with his agent at the time. He gave me a name, and the rest was history, because he was the one who suggested. I had no clue I could do this as for a job, for any sort of real thing. And he did, man. It was awesome.
And now I come to you for voiceover advice.
Right. You do voiceover, Mike. You never really touched on what you did there.
Oh, was I not allowed to say that?
No. Mike was like what he does now,
okay.
and but there's some people just tuning in for the. I mean, we're huge in India. We're huge in Zimbabwe. We're huge in Australia. We got a huge thing going on everywhere. There's people tuning in for the first time.
Yeah.
What up, world?
Oh yeah, that's it, man. I would not probably. I may have ended up eventually, but my kickoff was because of JJ, and I am forever indebted to him for his suggestion and his recommendation. So thanks, buddy.
Hey, no problem, man.
Because of you, I never have to work in radio again.
Because of you, JJ, he finally made it and ended up on the Kids on the Escalator podcast.
That's it, man. That is it. Get to
Living the life. Living the life.
JJ, tell our fine listeners a little bit about you, man, and your podcast and what's going on with you.
So after I left the radio station I was at with Mike, I worked at a few other radio stations and left radio altogether, and then came back to Toronto and had a morning show on a station called Flow 93.5 with the beautiful and lovely and talented Melanie Martin, who is a legend in Toronto radio, and then we both got fired. 10 years later. Well, me
5.
10 years and her 9 years later. Anyway, we have a podcast now together because we have people say we have some great chemistry. I would agree with them. And so we tell lots of adult style jokes and talk about our lives. She's, single and out there. She was, a mom at a young age. So now she's, you got an empty nest, and I'm a dad with, 2 young kids and a wife, and we just have very different lives. And it really makes for some interesting conversation from 2 very, very different points of view. And it's like, it's the best. It's like once a week I get to shoot the breeze with one of my best friends.
Did you get fired for saying booger on the air?
Booger?
Booger! WKRP. I have to throw a WKRP reference in every episode. That was perfect.
Oh, that was
perfect.
Dr. JJ Fever is
there
what
you go, yeah.
Booger.
JJ Flytrap.
Had to throw that in there, man. Yeah.
Well, this is a podcast about other things, and we get into a bunch of pop culture stuff, as everyone listening has discovered, and we've been doing a shit ton of Star Wars stuff, but we haven't dove too far into comics outside of what Chris has brought to the table on Skeletron, and we've added a few things to the mix. So, hey, Marvel Universe, why don't we dive in a little bit? I guess the beginning of this chat would go with WandaVision, which debuts this week on Disney Plus, who JJ's already seen 3 episodes apparently. But Chris,
no, I haven't seen 3 episodes, but I know the people have. Yeah.
So what's in front of us, Chris? WandaVision.
Remember, I went into real big detail about WandaVision there a few episodes ago, but Wanda is it's like she's pretty devastated after what happened with everything going down with Vision, right? So she creates this pocket universe, this little universe, and you can see the SHIELD agents. Well, actually, they're not SHIELD agents; they're SWORD agents from a higher level of SHIELD. They're surrounding her house that she's living in with the Vision here. You can see that from all the promo. So she's creating this weird little universe. Now, where it could go, there's so many different ways it could go, right? Like, I'm really hoping that they bring Magneto in as her father, which is awesome because he's like one of my favorite villains of all time. If you've ever seen the X-Men movie, the beginning of X-Men 1 is just, it's so serious and so real with the way Magneto became Magneto. And he branches over to the other X-Men movie, First Class, I think it was called, or something like that. Anyway, and then they showed more background scene of Magneto with the Nazis and everything. Wow, what a great story! So I would love to see him brought in through having Scarlet Witch be his daughter, which would be really cool because Magneto is one of those stories that when you do mix a family in with Magneto or some kind of caring element, it doesn't ruin the villain at all. It actually adds to Magneto. It's like this. The funny saying I say with a buddy of mine is like how you were feeling was a little more Professor X and a little less Magneto, or a little more Magneto, a little one or the other, right? Because they're both 2 sides of the same coin. They're just excellent characters. Magneto being the villain, of course, Professor X from the X-Men being the hero. So I would love to see that sort of thing brought in. Now another thing that's been let known is that this is going to lead into the Doctor Strange movie, the multiverse. Okay, so out of the multiverse we get the Spider-Verse. So this is all these. That's the cool thing about this is the first part of our new phase for Marvel movies, right? Which is going to take us always on such a great roller coaster ride. The Mandalorian has been starting to use the kind of style that Marvel's been using, which is sensational. And really, the fans just love it. The fans are eating it up left and right. So the big thing about WandaVision to me is what it's going to lead into, because I know these characters very well. There's and Wanda is so powerful. Scarlet Witch is so powerful, and hopefully they expand on that a bit. What else can I say about WandaVision that I didn't really, go into before? Because the other one I really went into a lot of small detail. But the biggest part of it is that she's losing her mind. She makes this pocket universe. She's going to create some kids. In the comic book, she created twins, and then a demon came and tried to take the babies. That was the whole plot. So hopefully I didn't ruin it. Spoiler if they take it right from the comics. But she's going to lose her mind and create a multiverse or something. Doctor Strange is going to come in and have to help her. And then from there, hilarity's going to ensue, and we're going to have all these Spider-Men and Spider-Women running around in the third one, right? So there's the path that as I see it. All right, so there's my spider knowledge, or my Marvel knowledge, I guess it would be, on that one there. So
it's episodic. We're going episodic with WandaVision.
So, but it's gonna the big thing to me is it's gonna lead into so much more, right? Now this is gonna be very entertaining, and the audience seem to like things that are a little different these days. This is definitely gonna be different. The way they're filming it with old sitcom references and stuff like that. I love Easter eggs though. So who doesn't love a good Easter egg, right? So I'm looking forward to what it's gonna lead to and all the cool Easter eggs. Hopefully they'll show how powerful Wanda can
I'm
be.
hearing rumblings that there's Full House Easter eggs in there
Oh, there's gotta be.
because the sister,
It's her
right?
sisters,
She's the
right?
younger
The
one.
twins, yeah.
Right.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
gotta
it's crazy. Mike, JJ, what are your thoughts on have you on this on the show?
So,
Come
Mike, go ahead if you want.
No. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's interesting that you mentioned, Chris, that this could be they could tie Magneto into this, and this could be the branch that extends out to the X-Men, which I know a lot of Marvel fans really want to see the X-Men incorporated into the Marvel universe. And I'm hopeful of that too. The House, if you're a fan of if you're familiar with the comic books, the House of M was a huge comic book story that went down in the early 2000s and like 2005, 2006. And Scarlet Witch actually got rid of all the mutants.
No
So
more mutants.
there
What a great
are
panel that
no more
was.
mutants. Oh, fantastic.
What a great panel.
So there is the potential here for that to have happened, in some alternate reality, but there's also the potential for Mephisto, and I think you kind of mentioned him to
alluding
be
to
part
it,
of,
yes, yeah.
right. He could be a part of this as well, because there's a story from the 80s where Mephisto trapped Scarlet Witch and Vision and made them believe that they had kids to manipulate them, and they weren't really their kids. So, and Mephisto ties into other Marvel characters who are rumored to be joining the Marvel universe, like what's his name? Skullhead.
It's Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah,
That's
Ghost
okay.
Rider. And I mean, Mephisto's in the Ghost Rider movies.
Morbius, probably, I would think Morbius.
Yeah,
He would bleed
Morbius,
into that.
and so then everything is happening with Venom, and then there's this new Jared Leto movie where Jared Leto plays
The vampire Morbius, yeah.
vampire, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the thing with the multiverses, you can do anything, which is brilliant, right? You just whatever, tie them all in, doesn't matter. This doesn't exist anymore. It was all part of Wanda's dream or Wanda's manipulation. So the potential here to listen, if they drop the ball on this in a scenario where you can literally do anything, that'll be the biggest fail of all time.
I can't see that. And
Being the
I don't know
launching
if
point.
any of you guys check out the Nerdist at all. Website, the Nerdist.
Which a little bit.
Occasionally.
Okay, Rosie Knight, who writes for the Nerdist, she came up with a pretty interesting take on where they may go with this, based on one of the first WandaVision trailers.
Oh, okay.
And follow me along if you get this.
Yeah.
So in the trailer, Wanda looks at a clock, and the clock is set at a time either 1:16 or 1:17, which Rosie then points out in the Avengers comics 1:16 and 1:17 was the big Avengers Defenders going up against Dormammu and Loki.
Ooh.
Wow.
So where she's saying is this may sort of all tie in with Loki and with at the end of the original Doctor Strange movie, Dormammu was sort of told, okay, hey, we're going to make a deal here. You leave Earth alone and I will break this loop.
Right.
So she's talking now that if that's an Easter egg, if the plan for the MCU is to follow that storyline where Dormammu becomes the big bad, trying to find a loophole to get back at Earth, basically using Wanda, he's got some sort of, I think it's called the Eye. It's almost Agamotto, I think is that was
yeah.
okay. So he's using this to get into Wanda's head. That's his little path, and eventually using Loki is going to turn the two sides, the two teams, sort of against each other, and they're all going to try to get this Eye to fight Dormammu. So Dormammu becomes the big bad.
The big bad.
In the next, he'll be the new Thanos, which apparently ties into a lot of with the Eternals now, with Shang-Chi as well. There's a lot of characters. Will we see Gilgamesh become because he was the guy who could have beat Thanos had, the Eternals sort of said, okay, you know what? We said we're not going to do anything here. We'll let them just fight it out. But apparently, you know, Gilgamesh is tougher than Thor, tougher than Hulk, could take on Thanos. And I think he was the forgotten one, or they called him the forgotten one in the comic.
Right.
He was the one who didn't want to follow that whole rule. So according to Rosie Knight, and a lot of these sort of, you know, weird little Easter eggs kind of line up. So if you look at, if you go back, you can find it online too. And I just sort of quickly read through the comic today. Avengers 116 and 117 sort of talks about the Avengers and the Defenders, how they go eventually to sort of fight Dormammu as being the big bad guy. So, which ties into Loki and his series. So, in the whole multiverse.
Are we excited about a Loki series? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Are we excited about all of this stuff, JJ? You talked when we were talking over Christmas about, you know, they were going too far on, say, Boba Fett or a couple of the other things. You didn't want to know anything else. Are you happy with the way they're going with Marvel?
Yeah, I mean, Marvel Universe is, you know, it's so different from Star Wars. The thing about Star Wars is it's not as, you know, expansive. I mean, it's huge, don't get me wrong, but with the whole what's canon now, they've really narrowed it down quite a bit. Characters like Boba Fett, characters like Boba Fett, James Bond, Han Solo. There's so much mystery behind these characters. And I don't want to know the backstory of a lot of these characters, right? And James Bond lately has been like revealing a lot about who he was an orphan and he was friends with this guy back in the day. And it's like, I don't need to know all that stuff. It's too much. Keep the mystery there. And with Boba Fett, now I've been schooled on this since I made these comments, but Boba Fett, to me, there's a lot of mystery behind Boba Fett. Like, how did he crawl out of the Sarlacc pit and all that stuff? So to me, it's like, just keep that a mystery, much like, you know, midichlorians, keep that a mystery. I don't want to know about where the Force is.
Bury the midichlorians. It was the worst idea ever that was introduced, but
so I can't remember what the question was. I kind of went out here on a tangent.
The question was, where did you get your shirt from?
My wife bought it for me.
It's all good. It's about, are we excited about where they're taking the MCU?
Yeah, I'm super excited, and I'm excited to see, or more curious to see, because WandaVision was supposed to be this. It wasn't supposed to come out first. It wasn't supposed to be the first part of this whole new phase of the Marvel Universe. It was supposed to be the fourth installment of the whole thing structure. So I'm curious COVID. Yeah. I'm curious to see how they're going to reshuffle things, how this is going to play into when movies actually come back into movie theaters. Are people going to be lost if they don't have Disney Plus? Those things I'm kind of curious about. Just going back to Mike, you're talking about who the potential big bad was. I feel like, and I just kind of thought of this now, having a big bad seems too easy.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of feel like instead of a big bad with a multiverse, it could be just a bad situation that everyone's got to get out of. You know, like is everyone going to be trapped in a dream? Is everyone going to be at the mercy of a dream master? You know, having like a who's stronger, like who's going to, you know, kick, you know, whoever's ass. I don't know. It seems too easy. And I feel like Marvel has gone beyond that at this point.
Yeah, but that's the thing with Hollywood, I find, is that, you know, as history has dictated, usually Hollywood will go for the cheap and easy because they know it makes money. And with the way that they've structured the Marvel Universe so far, I mean, you did have a lot of these individual stories that didn't need any sort of tie-in to Thanos ultimately in the end, or the Infinity Stones.
Right.
But to have that overall arc, yeah, it seems like it's an easy paint by numbers thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think as an audience, I think most audiences are conditioned to have that sort of mindless, okay, what's the whole point? There's a big bad, the good guys have to beat the big bad guy, and then yay, we celebrate. I don't know if you know, Kevin Feige can get around sort of the old style of Hollywood thinking that we got to make this as dumb as possible for the biggest amount of people.
Well, that's, I mean,
while still
isn't that
while
what
still tying in, or while still playing to the hardcore fans, which is kind of what they're doing with the Star Wars thing now. Is that, you know, they realize that they need to be able to present this to a big audience,
Right.
but their core audience are the ones that, you know, they're going to bring in those fringe viewers by how excited they are. So if they can bring an Ahsoka show in and like, oh my God, this is awesome, this is like
Right.
an extension of Rebels, then people are like, well, what's that all about? They'll come in. I think the Marvel universe, I think ultimately they're going to bend to that. We need a big bad guy.
Let's go to Chris for a minute, because Chris, you draw comics and you have to draw arc and story arc, and you have to
Right.
plan it out. You're planning it out. What your thoughts on this
Well,
side of it? Like,
I think if they go the way of Dormammu, I think there's going to be a bigger baddie on top of that. Like, I think if they do use him coming in, I did hear that they're using a villain possibly in the new Deadpool movie that's already been out in other movies. A lot of people are saying Taskmaster. But for this instance, for the huge big baddie, see, here's the thing: they just got the property of some of their biggest money makers now. They got the Fantastic Four, X-Men, which inside the X-Men is Wolverine, right? And the can you imagine a Deadpool Wolverine movie? Like, my lord, man, that would a rated R.
Seems inevitable.
But who are you going to get to
amazing.
Wolverine?
Well, remember we talked about this, Mike, and my wife wants Daniel Radcliffe in there, right?
Wow.
This is where I almost
He
feel
wants the
like
gig bad.
it will be disappointing if it's not Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds.
Right. Well,
Like,
it's got to be Ryan Reynolds, right? Like, it's got to be Ryan Reynolds. But I don't know if Hugh Jackman can...
I think that's what would make the dynamic. I think that's what's made the dynamic to this point of having a Wolverine Deadpool in the same universe something that people want, because it's Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds and their man love to each other. You know,
it's pretty big in the comic book as well. Like their relationship in the comic book is really tight, and even funnier is Deadpool's relationship with Spider-Man in the comic book. Deadpool worships Spider-Man. It's so funny. Like, just worships him. Like, oh my God, he said it. You know, like when he does quips and stuff, and he's, oh, I can't believe it was Spider-Man. This is great.
Which will be funny to see if it's, you know, Ryan Reynolds, older Ryan Reynolds, and younger Tom Holland. So I think that might be a very funny play if they can't get, you know, Hugh Jackman to redo Wolverine, at least for one, you know, one scene or one sequence of events where if they could get the two of them together, I think that would make it. But if you're going to go straight, if you're going to get straight Deadpool and brand new Wolverine, whoever it is, I don't know if the magic is as sweet as if it were, you know, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds.
Well,
but in a multiverse situation, you could bring back
anything.
Hugh Jackman, and it totally makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as the villains go, the massive villain that they bring in, like the Thanos villain that they bring in, the one that I would really like to see is Galactus. But that's Fantastic Four's main villain, right? And he eats planets, and that would bring in the Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer is his herald. He flies around. Well, I guess they tried to do Galactus in a Fantastic Four movie, and he was a cloud, and that was pretty bad. They've had such bad luck with Fantastic Four movies, right? But they have some of the most powerful villains. Doctor Doom's another one. He's a fantastic villain, more of an Earthbound villain, but the guy's just amazing. Another great villain. But as I say, I like Mike's idea. If it does happen, I think there'll be somebody above Dormammu. Like, I think Mephisto is a pretty big one too, right? And
Mephisto's first appearance was actually in Silver Surfer, so
it was, right? So
it ties into all that.
He's a big villain, and there's so many different people rumored to be playing Mephisto. Like Keanu Reeves has been rumored to play, and there's been all these others. So that's a pretty big role, right? So depending on what they do, but yeah, I think there'll be somebody above Dormammu, just because he was already a main villain in Doctor Strange. So,
but he was a main villain, but I don't necessarily think he was. I don't think we got to see how bad an ass Dormammu could be.
Right.
And because we've been introduced to him in the first the first chunk of the Marvel movies, from a movie executive point of view, well, the audience knows. I go back, it's almost like the Vince McMahon theory. It's like, well, God damn it, pal, they know who he is, so let's make him the big baddie this time, and they'll buy into that. You know.
Well, I don't know if the Marvel fans would, though, because as I say, like, Galactus is more powerful.
Marvel fans might not, but the general public, again,
how much can they tell me? Okay, but the question about that, we talked about it on the with the Mandalorian, about how they're we're getting the A-Team episodes, as you said, when it's like they got to go on an adventure every day and it's over and it's all the rest of it. So they're satisfying the average. Well, sorry, the hardcore Star Wars fans are getting what they want, the little things that we talked about. And Marvel, to Chris's point, has done an amazing job at this point, even educating, like I'm a DC guy, so bringing me into that universe and really tying it all in together was really cool for me to kind of be like, right, that, and I'm still on the outside looking in when it comes to a lot of it, because I am a DC guy. But the thing is that they do dumb it down enough. I think Mike, going further down, they're going to lose it. And I guess it comes back to it comes back to what I asked about earlier, which is how much is too much. And there was a point when it was Marvel Madness and then everyone was like, you'd see something coming out and you're like, oh, another Marvel movie. And then you're like, now there was a point where I felt like they were just making movies for Chris. And then
right out of the comic book, like the Infinity Gauntlet, man, like that last big, that was right out of the comic book. But they didn't have Silver Surfer, so they used Hulk in some different scenarios and stuff like that. But that was like right out of the comic book. So see, I'm trying to figure out a storyline, a monumental storyline in the Marvel universe that they could use with this. But now with the multi-universe thing coming in, man, it could, as JJ said, it could be anything. It could, like,
let's go to Deadpool for a minute, fellas.
Hang on a second. I just want to say one more thing to what you were saying, Brent, about The Mandalorian. I think The Mandalorian kind of made a little bit of the point that I'm trying to make, is that how universally loved and received would The Mandalorian have been had they not used Baby Yoda as the focal point, because it's Yoda. Everybody knows Yoda. Everybody loves, and now it's a baby version. If it was just the Mandalorian and, Moff Gideon and the Darksaber, I don't think you would have had as big a reaction from the casual sort of, old kind of fringe Star Wars fan, or it's like, oh, or even like the non-Star Wars fans, like, oh, he's a cute little thing.
So does that piss you off, Chris? Would that piss you off if they put or JJ, or would that piss you off if, like, I know it's like Guardians of the Galaxy, they got Groot and it's cute and everything, and obviously that's part of the thing, but it would piss you off if in WandaVision they put some kind of like, in there to get everybody in, or are you okay accepting that as long as
there's not really anything like that in the storyline, so I don't know where they would.
The Mandalorian, I'm just saying they can make up anything.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the difference, though, too. Marvel's been telling stories since the early =60s, right? Like, there's and you know how you were saying, like, oh, there's all this Marvel, dude. That's been going on and on since the '60s, like, late '60s. Oh my God, too much Marvel. Let's buy DC. Like when it was just comic books, and then in the '70s, it was like, oh wow, look at all this Marvel TV that's garbage. Look at all the DC. Let's watch DC. And then the '80s comes along, right? No, but you know what? This is
those '70s Captain America shows were amazing.
This is the common watcher that we were just discussing, though, right? Not as fanboys, but no, this is the way it's been since the '60s. Star Wars has been this way since the very late '70s, early '80s. So Marvel has 20 years on them as far as jumping storylines and stuff, right? So, and there's not as much, and Marvel also makes so much more comic books than Star Wars does. So there's been so many more little stories told, whereas Star Wars hasn't had the blanks filled in. We haven't officially known what happened to Boba Fett, you know what I mean? But we did know what happened to Spider-Man when certain things happen, because it's all over the place. We know Uncle Ben's story, right? Like I saw a documentary on it where they went to China, they went to all over the world, and they just showed this. They just showed the Spider-Man. Oh, yeah, it's my uncle. And they know the Uncle Ben story. Everybody knows it, right? So that's the difference between Marvel and Star Wars, is there's been so many comic books, so many cartoons, so many stories that they have filled in a lot of the gaps. Where when you watch The Mandalorian, it's like, wow, Boba Fett's finally getting his comeuppance, right? Where Spider-Man's had his comeuppance over and over and over again. You know, like it's just we're on our third Spider-Man, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's been so many of them. So
I guess my point was just that if Marvel does decide to go with the baddie being somebody that's been seen already in the Marvel universe, but maybe not in a major role, it wouldn't surprise me from an executive point of view where they say the casual, or at least the people that followed the first half, they know this. But we don't have to go through a whole deep cut. Here's a baddie from a comic book that this many people had read, but I
I'm
don't.
hoping that they bring a Roscoe Pico train and let's just get it going.
Well, the funny thing about the
let's
Deadpool
go.
movie,
We're all
right?
Marvel people, right? We're all JJ. Well, I'm DC, but JJ, you Marvel. Mike, you Marvel.
Yeah, I'm Marvel and DC. I swing both ways.
Nice.
There we go.
Well, so the Deadpool
let's
movie,
go to
right?
Deadpool.
Yeah,
let's
like,
go to
well,
Deadpool.
here's a great example. Okay, do you guys tell me? So, tell me if you've heard of any. Okay, have you heard of the villain T-Ray? Anybody heard of the villain T-Ray?
No.
Okay, have you heard of the villain? Well, Taskmaster we've heard of now because of the
Yeah.
Black Widow, but I don't know how many people would have. Mr. Sinister?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Slayback.
Slayback?
Slayback, like Slayer, but
No.
back. Okay, these are the top 4 thought of villains that are going to be in the Deadpool movie, because Deadpool's villains they're not even popular villains, because he is actually a newer character. He's from the late 90s. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Or early 90s, sorry. So he's one of the newest characters that have been created, because we were talking about Spider-Man, 1963, I believe it was. Holy cow. He's been around for a long time. Deadpool, not so much. But his linkage to the X-Men, I'm actually hoping they pull a villain out from the X-Men and bring it in. Mr. Sinister would be amazing, because again, he's responsible for a lot of the X-Men, like Cyclops and stuff like that. He experimented, and I believe they dropped Mr. Sinister's real name in a few movies too, right? So he, like in the Wolverine Logan one, I believe they dropped his name in there, and in the last Deadpool, that school kind of place, not school, that penitentiary where that the kids were at.
Yeah.
That main guy, the name on there was one of Sinister's alias names. So they have dropped hints on Mr. Sinister. Again, like, see, my whole thing is that your hero's only as good as your villain, right? You know what I mean? Which is weird, because the Juggernaut was in there last time, and he wasn't, really, it didn't seem like he was the main villain after all. It was more of a moral.
That snotty nose little shit.
Yeah,
was
you
in
know,
it. I
well,
don't
yeah,
like
well,
that
he was,
kid.
but it wasn't him that was the villain. It was the future him that was the villain. So
They
they
put
brought
him
in the
in
whole
that-
time travel thing with Cable.
That kid's getting all that.
Which I got to say too. One more thing, and then I'll pass the mic. Cable in Deadpool, like, one thing that ticks me off. Hugh Jackman got away with it with Wolverine, but at first I was a little, Wolverine's supposed to be my height, 5'5". That's how big Wolverine's supposed to be. Okay, Cable is supposed to be like 7 foot something tall. Josh Brolin was shorter than Deadpool, and so I'm watching them walk, and I'm just like, like. Sorry, I'm one of those
Who would
guys.
you have cast?
I don't know, man. There's many other people. Like, I can't think of it off the top of my head because I haven't thought about it in a while. But no,
Yeah.
I could find much better. I'm thinking somebody actually.
Gigante.
I love the way that I loved in Guardians of the Galaxy, Drax, the wrestler there, man. Oh man, and I would never have thought Batista to play Drax. Especially from the comic book, but man, that dude, he's such a sensational.
That was amazing
sensational
casting.
job, buddy. Yeah,
That was
and then
amazing.
Sasha Banks coming up in the Mandalorian there, man. Like, maybe I don't know if there's any wrestlers. I'm gonna talk to Mike about. I got a bit of a wrestling question like this for Mike later, but I could think of somebody, buddy, but just not off the top of my head right now. But okay, so that's my thoughts.
I heard a rumor, and I have asked this. I've asked one of the names involved in that rumor if there was any truth to it, and surprisingly was told nothing. But in the original Deadpool 2, who was the original director? There was somebody that was originally
Canned him. Yeah, they canned him. I forget what his name was.
Yeah.
They canned him.
Anyway, Tim something. Tim
fired McGee.
Anyway, there was a rumor that Adam Copeland was supposed to play Cable.
Okay, I could do that. I could do that.
In one of the original, before Ryan Reynolds decided to take the movie in a different direction.
I could do that. Yeah,
So-
he'd be a good long shot as well.
I asked, and he said no. He said there's nothing. But I don't know.
Well, you know what, Mike? I was gonna say I was watching a video, I got the WWE channel now, so I clicked it on the other day, and there was this documentary on Edge, right? And it was a close up of his face, and he looked so legitimately beaten that he probably could do a really good Cable, because Cable's like he's weather beaten, right? He's a time traveler.
Well, I know he loved the Deadpool comics. So,
Oh man, I never even thought. That's what I'm saying, JJ. Somebody like that, maybe. I thought Josh Brolin did an amazing Thanos, but let's just leave it there, right? I don't know, man. It just didn't do it for me. I thought his acting was really good, the close up of his face, but the action scenes when they pan out on everybody was because Cable.
I like Deadpool. I like Deadpool too, but the kid that they put in as the villain,
No.
he's
Future villain,
I'm
right?
having a real
Future
problem
villains.
with that kid. I'm
Future
having a problem
villains
with
are all
that kid.
suckles.
and then they put him in the thing with the Christmas Chronicles movie, and I'm like, well, that's out. And then now, and Jared Leto, he's like my other arch nemesis, so I'm not going to see
Jared
that,
Leto.
so I'll miss that whole thing. So, what about you, JJ, on the Deadpool? What are you thinking, buddy?
Listen, Ryan Reynolds does such a great job with that character, and it's so break the fourth wall that really, I hate to keep defaulting to he can do anything, but he can kind of do anything. Like his character, his personality, throw anything at him, and it's the character. It's like a one man show. So anything could be going on around him. Any sort of casting can happen around him, and it has, and some characters just get thrown away. Like I really thought with Deadpool 2 it was going to be an X-Force movie, and it wasn't, but it was still very, very satisfying. Like I know a lot of people wanted it to be an X-Force movie, and I know there was like a little section of it, but Ryan Reynolds pulled it off because everyone is he's just such an engaging character as Deadpool. So yeah,
he played a significant role in that though too, and because he can the director, because they wanted to take it in a different direction. I don't know why you do. The fourth wall made that Deadpool 1 changed comic book movies. For me, there hadn't been anything.
See, he does that in the comic book too, that blows everybody away, right? Like that's his thing.
It changed comic book movies for me. The Dark Knight was for me. I loved the Dark Knight and Christopher Nolan's kind of take. I love the Dark Knight series, and I thought that's a comic book movie that I'm digging. I wasn't a big fan of the Spider-Mans per se. I thought they did it. They probably from a story arc. Chris, you could speak to this.
Oh man, see, I love Spider-Man so much.
They did, but I didn't. I wasn't like a massive fan of there's the three of them, right? I mean, Toby, I kind of dug, and I sort of dug it, but I'm just saying, like, it wasn't until, because this is the DC in me coming up, but just the texture of the Dark Knight and the darkness of it, and no pun intended, but just the feeling of that. And I hadn't had a feeling of like coming out of a comic book movie since then, where I was like, just totally like, wow. And Deadpool was that for me, where I was like, holy shit. And then it reappeared again in Logan. I thought they did a killer job in Logan.
Was so good.
So yeah.
What do you think of Christopher Nolan? The recent rumor that Christopher Nolan's going to do another. Batman
Michael
movie.
Keaton. They're talking about bringing. Well, sorry, let me back that up for a second. They're talking about Tim Burton closing out the Batman series with like a full Michael Keaton movie, and then the other side of it was having Michael Keaton kind of be old Batman in a series, like a sort of like a 3-part. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know how that's going to go down.
Are they still Are they still filming the Batman with what's his face, Richard Pat?
I think it's done, I think it's done. Yeah, but there's been this whole thing about Keaton old Batman.
Yeah, it's DC trying to keep up the rumor mill with Marvel. I don't know.
I'm sorry, but Keaton in Spider-Man Homecoming was amazing. Like I loved, like he's got that good bad guy vibe to him,
It's the eyes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I think
a great actor.
And I can't, I think if they went back and did that whole, if they did do like old Batman with Keaton, I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna have old Nicholson as old Joker.
Oh no,
he actually didn't die.
No,
it's gonna have
it's a bad idea.
It's gonna have an old Wonder Woman. They're actually gonna bring
one's
Linda Carter.
for that.
Who's gonna do the soundtrack though? Because
it can't be Prince, right?
Can't be Prince.
That's Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl
will do that.
Anyways, I'm stoked for Deadpool where it's gonna go. I think it's pretty rad, and they're filming it out here again, so it's deadly.
Oh, are they?
I think you need a Hugh Jackman. I think you need a Wolverine, appearance at the very least. It'd be great if it was a Deadpool Wolverine movie, but at the very least, you need to have a good long cameo.
Do we have an answer to the end of Logan, if he's dead or not?
Well, in the comic book, they killed him off, and then they brought him back. In the movie, okay, so as far as the writing goes on the movie, what was supposed to happen is all those kids went across to Canada there, and it was Alpha Flight that was saving all these kids, right? The Canadian team, and that's the funny thing is the kids go back to where kind of Wolverine started
Started.
in the Canadian government in Operation H or something it was called. It wasn't X at that time. It was Operation something else. Anyway, so those kids were all going to Alpha Flight to Canada, and that's where Wolverine started off being trained by Vindicator and Alpha Flight. He was supposed to actually lead Alpha Flight in the comic book. This was after
There's a character I'm curious about is X-23.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
right.
In the comic book, she's fantastic in the her character is amazing.
Man. Yeah,
and her origin is amazing. It's a great story as well. I'd like to see, and that actress who played her, can't remember her name.
Neither can I. Wasn't she good?
She was dynamite. I would love to see if they evolve that character and make a sequel to Logan called X-23. I mean,
yeah, I thought I wasn't sold on her at first, like, because in the comic books, sometimes it seems like Marvel does some things in the comic books just to keep everybody from complaining. You know what I mean? Like there's more female Spider-Man than there are male Spider-Man right now in the Spider-Woman, but like there is, right? And that's cool. Yeah. I'm fine with that. But to make a character that way just to please the masses, as Mike was saying there, with like certain things, that can definitely ruin stuff as well, right?
Yeah. Actress's name was Daphne Keane.
Daphne
Keane.
Fantastic. And she's probably of age now to go back and do sort of at least an homage to her real origin story with NYX, where she was, on the streets and
well, she's 16 now. She was born in 05.
So maybe not yet. Maybe in 2 years or so.
By the time Disney gets the whole Marvel thing with the Fox properties over, I think she'll
by
be.
the time people are allowed to go to a theater again, everyone will be 10 years older, anyways. Sure. Everyone's going to be 10 years older.
But we do know that Deadpool 3 is going to be rated R.
Yes.
And that was one of the big concerns when Disney took it over, that they were going to Mickey Mouse it, and which I don't know. As back to what JJ was saying, Ryan Reynolds can do anything. I really think there could have been not only a challenge for him from the character and acting standpoint, but I think he would have been able to pull off a not so rated R Deadpool and still make it funny and make it.
They did a Christmas Kids version, didn't they?
Oh, they edited it down. Yeah, I didn't watch
that.
They
edited it down.
I did not watch
and they
that.
did one, and I was hoping that they would do it because my little guy's dying to watch it. I'm like, not yet, buddy. So, but there's like, I heard that they could do two. They should do two versions of it. They really should.
So now it's for phase 4. I think originally it was supposed to be 5 films and the 5 TV shows. Is that what they're saying is going to comprise this phase 4?
Here's what we got, buddy. We got January 15th, this Friday. We got WandaVision. All right.
Okay.
March 19th, we got Falcon the Winter Soldier. All right. And then in May, we have the Loki TV show and the Black Widow movie. And then July, we got Shang-Chi, and November, we got the Eternals. So that's...
Is there anyone we're not looking forward to?
We could... I don't know. It's Marvel. They always find a way to make it interesting for me. But
yeah.
Shang-Chi,
I felt the same way about Guardians of the Galaxy. When it was introduced, I thought, this is really out there. And then Guardians, they blew it out of the water.
And I heard that they're going to cross Deadpool over though into MCU a little bit more with more people from, like, to what we were talking about earlier. But do we see anybody, like, do we see the Guardians come in there?
Well, with Deadpool?
At all? If it's an R-rated movie, it'd be
walk on.
Thor just something. Yeah.
Thor comes out before the Guardians, right? I think in the original chain. So Thor is going to be pre-Guardians, although we'll see the Guardians in that because it's the Asgardians of the Galaxy right now.
Yeah.
Now, back to what JJ said earlier on, I'll be very curious to see how they'll manage because of COVID and how they've had to sort of rejig the schedule, if it's going to affect sort of the long plan, or if they're, because they're so good at planning the quote unquote end game, if these COVID blips where they've had to sort of reschedule things aren't going to make a huge difference as far as like characters being introduced and storylines and where we're going to go with this. It'll be interesting to see if they've planned it out far enough in advance and have everything sort of in line that, the fact that Black Widow didn't come out this year or last year, I guess.
Yeah. And Venom should have been out by now too, right?
Venom 2, yeah.
Venom should have been out. Yeah, it's a few of them. So,
My little guy's dying for that
We're
movie.
gonna have to backpedal a bit, right, to maybe line some stuff up.
I'm excited about Falcon and the Winter Soldier because I was reading an interview and they're saying that they're actually filming the show very much like they film a regular Marvel movie.
Oh wow!
So I'm
Wow.
expecting that to be probably from a sort of a visual standpoint, probably going to be one of the better shows. Although I'm curious how they're going to handle the whole Steve Rogers thing. Like, is he still in the timeline as old Steve, or is
That's right.
or did he
But
go
Ant-Man. Have we talked about Ant-Man?
Quantumania? Well, Quantumania doesn't come out till 2023, maybe, or
Yeah, for a
2020.
while. I love Ant-Man. I always get Phil Rudd and Paul Rudd mistaken between the AC/DC drummer.
The
Right?
AC/DC,
It's
yeah.
Paul Rudd, right? Yeah, it's Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, yeah.
Paul Rudd's
He can
hilarious.
also do no wrong.
I know, right? He's great. He's so great.
He tries to go dramatic, and people are like, huh.
I Love You, Man is one of my favorite movies. That's such a good movie. He was great in that. He's great. Now he's
Yeah.
an amazing
Great
Ant-Man as well, though. Too. I thought Marvel's really good at adding a little bit of humor in there, huh? Especially with Guardians of the Galaxy. Wow, did James Gunn did such a spectacular job with that one.
Who here
Unbelievable.
has Disney Plus?
I do.
I do.
Okay, everybody's. Be honest. Over the holidays, I'm sure everybody watched a fair amount of Disney Plus. Do you find yourself watching more Marvel movies than Star Wars movies?
Oh, I've been chain smoking Star Wars movies because of the
Really?
Mandalorian, man. Yeah, I actually, and plus we've been talking about it though, Mike, and I always complain about those movies, right? So what I did was I sat down and I watched them all while I was doing my book, right? I chained them all, man, and went back to and got. So if we ever need to do an episode on all those Star Wars movies and what I really disliked and what I liked, I could do it now smartly instead of just throwing like
I
insults
admittedly
at the
have to
movie.
get caught up. I had a neighbor that was watching every single Marvel movie from the beginning till the end.
Wow.
And I was like, I've seen them all,
Yeah.
but I don't think I actually watched Doctor Strange. I don't
Oh
think
my
I
gosh, it's
actually
amazing.
watched- yeah.
Oh,
I'm
fantastic.
just saying, it was like,
Yeah.
there's another, and I missed one of the Captain Americas. And then I'm just saying, it was like a whole bunch all at once where I'm like, I still got to get caught up on a bunch of things. you know?
I can say the lines along with a lot of those Marvel
I
movies.
find myself defaulting to the Marvel. Like if we're just, we just finished, Owen just finished watching Breaking Bad. So I watched that whole series again with him. And I find at night when we're just sort of, there's nothing on TV, we'll throw on Disney. 9 times out of 10, we're watching Marvel movies instead of the Star Wars stuff. And I'm like, is that because the Marvel movies are better?
I think it's. Can I answer that? Can I answer that from the other side for a second?
Okay.
Are we finding anything new in the Star Wars movies? When you watch them now,
in the movies.
like
Oh,
I'm
no,
just talking about
that was-
the current, let's say the original, like the
Don't
six.
get me started
okay?
on those new movies, man.
I'm just saying on the 9, but I'm just saying when I watch a Marvel movie, I
Yeah.
go, oh, at least once I've stopped doing that with Star Wars.
Kind of like I was today years old when I realized this type of moment.
Just with Marvel, I keep going like, right, because of course I'm a DC guy, as I mentioned, but whatever. I'm still learning it, but as we go. I think to your point, Mike, when I watch when I put on any Marvel movie, I kind of go, oh, okay, cool. That they tied that in there, And I thought Ant-Man did a killer job of tying that together. Actually, I thought that was one of the best ones
Good one.
of
Loved it.
pulling some of those little.
I
things
can't think of
together.
a Marvel
JJ,
movie.
what do
Well,
you
the early Thor ones I wasn't too fond of. Some of the first 2 Thor movies I found dragged a little bit for me, but I can't think of any other Marvel movies that really disappointed me. I think they're all really good. Well, like yeah, like the new ones, right? The new ones, not like.
I go back to Star Wars for how I felt at the time, and I don't know what the consensus is here about Rise of Skywalker, but I fucking love that movie.
Oh my
Rise of
God.
Skywalker.
Thank you.
I loved it.
Was that the last one
I
or the first
loved
one?
it.
The last one.
The last
Oh,
one. It
no.
was so much fun. I
Yeah,
can't
well,
believe people hate that movie so much.
Story.
It's like,
Story.
what was it? Was they have one movie to pull everything together, and man, it was.
And
felt-
this is the point in the show that we've
I
like
felt
to
like it was
introduce to our
just slapped
listeners. This
together.
is called debate time.
I felt like
This
that
is
last
who's
one was
leaving.
just slapped together. And so I checked this out, JJ. So I felt like this was bugging me for the longest time. So now you're getting these interviews with what's the actress's name on there?
Daisy Ridley.
Okay.
Daisy Ridley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check out some interviews with her. Oh, for the
Yeah.
first while, my father was Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Sure.
And then next they changed. Oh no! And then it was going to be this guy was going to be my father. It was like so. Oh, it was slapped together. It was.
Hey, come
slapped
on.
together.
Mark Hamill originally thought that Ben Kenobi was his dad too when they shot that
That's
scene.
But that would have been better. That would have been better than bringing a ragged Palpatine back to me.
That argument's out.
How can that argument be out?
Hey, because has Lonnie got some like Rocky music?
How can that argument be? No, but how can that argument be out? The whole they slap and they introduced the fact that Palpatine's back in between the movies. What that's ridiculous. If you knew ahead of time, you would have transported that at the end of that movie. Boom. That there's no way you would not have let the movie. If they knew that Palpatine was coming back, there's no way in hell they would have ended that movie without a Palpatine something in there. To announce it in between the movies, that's ridiculous. That's you don't do that.
You got one movie to make it happen and to fix the flaws. Sorry, I didn't like the Rain Johnson movie. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
I thought that was the big mess up for me. And JJ did, God love him, he did everything he could to bring it all together. Like if he had 3 more movies, of course it would be a whole other thing. But to have to package everything up, mistakes and all, and come out with what he came out with. Okay, I get the flaws.
I think I could write a better movie than him on that last one. I really do. I really think I could write that better. And I've never said that about any movie. The first one in the new ones was great. And then it was just people in Disney throwing things against the board, like Mike said. Oh, what'll be cute? What can we do? What can we do? Well, Poe Dameron should have died. They should have killed off Poe Dameron. The thing with Luke Skywalker in the second one was horrible. We get our drunk Luke, like, oh, I don't got any powers anymore. Oh, it's just like pissing on all the fans. So
I agree with that.
I'm so passionate about it, but it's just like, and then, but again, the whole Palpatine thing at the end, it was just so ridiculous.
First one, but
the first one was great. I thought the first one was really good.
Let's look at Hollywood. The first one was essentially A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no one disagrees with that.
No, that's obvious. I'm saying what they did with the characters after that was crap. Poe Dameron, why is he even there?
Yeah. Like, Ryan Johnson took the movie in the direction of somebody who wanted to get away from the old, the history of Star, like to bring it in a new direction.
Okay, well,
but he did.
I think though he also
on the.
I also think though that he was not given much, Mike. I think what happened was that he had an idea.
Bottom line, from what I've seen, that good. Like you can throw as many excuses in there. If this guy did this guy didn't have this guy didn't have this, but it's just the 3 movies didn't work. And there's, like you didn't learn anything from it. It didn't like. Mike, what's the biggest thing you learned from the newest trilogies? What did you get out of that from when you were a kid? What was the biggest revelation you got out of that?
That Chewie finally got his fucking medal.
Wow, 3 movies to show that. That's pretty bad. But I love that Chewie got his medal. But that's probably it.
But you know what? For me as a start, like, to what JJ was saying, those movies are about when I was that small and how much it meant to me as a kid to see that on the big screen and to sort of grow up with that. Rise of Skywalker, for the nitpicking that some have had about it and the whole Palpatine, there is no better bow tie that they could have done based on the garbage that was left over from Last Jedi.
They finished it off once. You're finishing it off again, and again, just putting him in between the movies. I don't. And plus the whole thing of the storyline falling apart as they're writing it. When you write a 3-piece Star Wars movie, man, you know what your beginning should be, and you should know what your end is, or you don't have that. You shouldn't be doing it. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't know where your end result.
They didn't write a 3-piece Star Wars movie.
Well, that's my problem. So here's my problem. Yeah. This is my problem. It's like, if you're going to do something of this, of this magnitude, do it proper. Don't just like, oh, we'll do this and maybe this, and we're not sure who the end guy, who her dad's going to be. Like, know what you're doing before you start the thing.
There's some rumblings floating that Lucas wants to do his version now.
Well, and you mentioned George Lucas. Would it have been different had George Lucas still been the architect of the last 3 movies?
Well, he wanted to bring Darth Maul in there, right? That was his idea, was to bring Darth Maul in there. So it may have been
worse. However, it would have been coherent over 3 movies. It would have been worse.
Maybe.
I've said this before. I wish they had done the Timothy Zahn, the series of books after Return of the Jedi. Had they made that film, like that trilogy of films, put those books onto the screen, it would have been ridiculously amazing.
See, that's my point, Mike. Is that there's the story from beginning to end. You know how it's going. When you have actors saying, "Well, they don't even know who the main father's going to be," like that's just. Thanks. Guys,
You're also talking what 90? When did Return was 83?
83.
Yeah. So we're talking a big chunk of time. You can't,
and to pick
it's
that
a lot harder. It's a lot harder to go back and relive the glory days 30 some odd years later. You have to introduce new characters. You have to come up with a new story. But the problem was, I don't think they didn't have the magic of the original story to do a new story. I think they tried. JJ, I thought he did great with Force Awakens.
I thought it was heading in a great direction.
I'm with JJ. I thought he did an amazing job on Rise of Skywalker.
Give him what he was at.
I was like, I was all
to the
happy.
point. I think to the point. Let's go with this. I'm going to just throw it out there.
Okay.
I was entertained. I wasn't disappointed. There was a couple of things that they could have done better. Number one, when they're, I think it's in the second movie, right? When they're trying to get away and they're shooting everybody, and Leia's captain, she jumps into the ship and she splits through the thing.
Yeah.
That should have been Leia. Number one.
That should have been Admiral Akbar.
Well, sure, but Akbar, I'll take it. But I think
there was a wasted character.
It would have been a better death.
Wasted.
I think it would have been a better death for Leia.
Okay, so you're talking about the girl that stayed on the ship when it crashed and did whatever there?
But then it went,
Isn't there a computer that could have drove that ship and she could have got off? Like, what there's no cruise control on that? Come on, again.
Rick on the gas.
Well, no, it's a long time ago, Chris. They had GPS. But listen, Spaceball said it best. There's plaid. There's a few.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there's so many holes. Okay, go on.
But yeah, but I would have liked Leia to do that. I would have liked a better death for Han Solo.
You have notes on this? You have notes on this? Because you looking like
it had me thinking. It had me thinking of like
no, that's cool. I
emotion because I remember listening to a little bit about it, and Chris and I've talked a lot about how Kevin Smith can write a really great female character, and how he pulls emotion out of a female character. There was some emotion moments in those three that I thought were like missing a little bit, and I thought they had a real good opportunity to do it. Like Leia. That just wasn't a good death for this person that's been with us the whole time. And I'm like, she at least, Chris, sure. Let's say the GPS broke. They could have been like, the GPS is broken. Okay, well, Leia, you got to get in there. That would have been a great death for her to like sacrifice herself instead of floating like Mary Poppins. So I'm kind of like a little bit more of that. I would have liked Han Solo when they killed Han Solo and Chewie yells out the big yell. That was emotional moment, but they didn't cut back to you know how well Harrison Ford sells a beating like he does in Indiana Jones, and like the way say Mel Gibson does in Lethal Weapon. No one does it better than Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford can make you're like, well, fuck that guy is hurt and he's still doing it. But emotionally, Harrison Ford could have pulled a lot out of that. I didn't. I'm like, you're killing off Han Solo.
The hand on the face of Kylo as he's falling back. You know what? I thought his death was great, and I loved the way they booked it in Skywalker.
Out of that death.
That was.
I would have rather seen Vader there. I would have rather seen Vader at the end instead of Han. To be honest with you, that was another thing was missing. Is he's worshiping Darth Vader through all the movies, but there's no Vader in there. Like there's so many opportunities they dropped the ball on for.
Vader was in Uxbridge.
Really cool he was in Uxbridge hanging out with my kids from the school there. But yeah,
and then one of the cool things, oh Chris, that they did do that they're touching on now is that apparently Ahsoka's voice was one of the ones yelling out to Rey at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they did a little bit there. Anyway, Star Wars.
I just
whole episode.
I just want to mention quickly how wasted the character of Finn was. Completely wasted.
Oh, I talked about that as well, buddy.
The setup for a black stormtrooper. He's the first thing you see in this new trilogy, and his character goes nowhere.
Have you heard him talk about it? Have you heard the actor talk about it?
No.
Oh, you got to look into that, my friend.
Like completely pointless character.
I agree.
And that was the biggest disappointment. I thought,
that was the ball that was dropped in Last Jedi. That was the ball that was dropped in Last Jedi.
Yeah. but to keep setting up that there be some reveal about him that never happened, maybe it'll happen in one of these movies.
Yeah.
The fact that there was no relationship between him and Daisy Ridley,
No
or
layers to that guy,
or
man.
with Poe. Like, I would have taken either one, a relationship with either one.
Something.
There's like nothing.
Or at
There's,
least
like,
kill one of them off so you feel something for them, right? Like,
yeah, he was the biggest waste of everything. But sorry, I know we like went off on this whole Star Wars.
no,
thing,
I
but-
know it was my fault, dude, because I've been wanting to do this for so long, and plus I
We have
rewatched
a
them
Star
all.
Wars
Right?
episode coming up.
I was
just gonna
excited.
put it. We're gonna
Somebody finally agreed with me that Rise of Skywalker was actually really good.
Oh,
It was.
I'm gonna
I
go
thought it
back
was
to the point, JJ.
a ton of fun.
It was a
Final point.
fun movie. I enjoyed it watching it.
my
I
Luke,
was
that's
entertained by it. I was not entertained by it.
Yeah.
But I personally there was a couple little things I wanted out of it that would have been different.
They
Yeah.
teased the Knights of Ren, and I would have loved to see more of the burning down of the Jedi Temple. But what Marvel does is they throw those in comic books, man. I got the comic books in the other room there, and they're worth a mint now. But it also shows how that all went down at the Jedi Academy with Luke and with Kylo Ren, and how he was.
But we can discover what's going to go on there now, because now at the end of Mandalorian, spoiler, Luke takes Baby Yoda, Grogu, off to
What are you
the
talking
school.
about?
Yeah.
So, so we could potentially now see the Knights of Ren. And,
Yeah, so we're backing
there's-
up there. There's this is so
Yeah.
they've done such a great job of fixing so many things. As we discussed, Filoni, man, like
Yeah.
like I would have loved to seen George Lucas do the movie with Filoni and Favreau. I would love to see the three of them. You know, I'm
Sweet.
trying to think of a movie that the three guys team up and do something really cool. But the three of them would be awesome. Three
Yeah.
Musketeers would work, but
George Lucas directing an episode of Boba Fett.
Sure, I'd like to see him. I'd like to
Or
see
writing
him
one at least.
work with the two dudes. You know what? Yeah, like I'd
Yeah.
like to see what they come up with. It might be
Yeah.
something pretty cool.
Only if the episode that he directs involves Gungans or Ewoks.
Nice, and no ladies dialogue at all, right? No ladies dialogue. It's not good.
And Val Kilmer as Willow still.
Mhm.
I got Val Kilmer right here. Did you see that?
Oh,
Did
man.
you say that because you saw like my wife has this autographed Val Kilmer Willow?
I
thing
have
right
that
here.
exact same thing. I got it.
I got his book. His book is quite something, actually. You guys
Nerd
read-
Block, Mike. You got that? You used to get
Yes.
the Nerd Block.
I got the nerd block of that. Yes. Sorry, Val Kilmer. We just
numbered and everything.
We just watched MacGruber last night.
Oh, I've never
His
seen that.
Guilty pleasure. Oh my God, it's hilarious. But Val Kilmer's in that, and I hadn't heard him, or I haven't heard him since he had his throat issues.
This a little bit.
He's got. It's almost like he's talking into one of the talk boxes
Oh,
now.
wow.
You know he's still getting cast. If you go on YouTube right now and type in Val Kilmer, I just read I picked up his book because it's actually quite great. He tells it really all the tales of all the movies he's been in, but he actually still getting cast
Oh, wow,
in
that's cool.
movies.
Isn't
So
he in the
he's
new
playing-
Top Gun?
Yeah,
he's in a new Top Gun.
Yeah, that's
I'm
sure
guessing the
that's-
funeral scene is his. I'm guessing they kill off the Iceman. I'm guessing they kill off the Iceman. Well, he can't fly a jet when he's like, I'm flying around. Anyways, but I think that I think that
I thought
don't
you were
smoke,
gonna say-
kids.
I thought you were going
That's
to say
this
it's
guy.
like you know how in the movie Solo, Lando's robot partner gets uploaded into the ship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Maybe Val Kilmer's voice gets
Uploaded into a
It's like Knight Rider
Yeah.
in a plane.
on your Huckleberry.
left.
We're gonna do to all right. That's Marvel and what's
Brutal.
Marvel and Star Wars.
I got
JJ,
one question for JJ. So JJ, you are into comics a bit, right?
Yeah.
What
A
is
little
your
bit.
favorite? So I love. I'm a little bit older, but John Byrne and Chris Claremont did an X-Men run around the late '70s, early '80s. It was when Phoenix first came in, right? The first of that. That's my favorite run of comic books is that X-Men series. What's your favorite comic book run, storyline, or art, or whatever, buddy?
Probably X-Force, the Apocalypse arc.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
What's it called? Archangel arc,
Mhm.
rather. I thought that was just amazing. And then I was into the whole Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men, and I thought they had some good arcs in there as well. And DC, since the new 52,
Yeah.
the reboot of just Batman, I thought was really fantastic.
Oh, it's huge
as
now
with,
too, man.
Courtship
It's-
of Owls, but you know what?
that was a good
Since my
series, though,
kids,
right?
yeah,
The Owl
yeah, now
series
it's a
was
series, yeah.
amazing, dude. Batman fans need to read that.
But I got kids now, so I can't justify spending like literally $300 a month on comic books.
Wow, that's tough. Yeah, I'm down to I'm 60 to 100, closer to 60 usually. I'm trying to be a little picky, but I'm not buying the big back issues anymore. I used to always save up money and eat it.
X-Force was my last favorite. You can't see my nerd closet, but I got
right.
I got Phantom X.
Nice. So did you get New Mutants as well with like the first appearance of Deadpool? Because that New Mutants went to 100 and then turned into X-Force, right?
No.
Oh man, and the Deadpool one was like 96, I believe. New Mutants 196, and then went to 200. Yeah, and then it turned into X-Force right from there. So that's Deadpool came in from the end of the New Mutants right into X-Force kind of thing. So I got that one from the. It's like
right, okay, so maybe I did. So I
well, if you have that one, buddy, it's worth like $1,000. That's a good
Is
one.
it?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
Oh, I gotta check.
Yeah.
I probably do.
Like you got any old comics there?
Well, I can help you out with that, buddy. You just hold them up and I'll tell you the price.
I got 6 long boxes in my storage room, so maybe one day we'll do an episode where we'll pull out.
We will.
Back.
Every episode we do, we come up with a new one. We got a whole Star Wars episode coming up. We got 80s wrestling coming up.
We got it came from the basement where we show off our old toys. Or our new toys, depending on how you buy your toys. And then we said, it came from
Mike,
a
what do you
box.
got for favorite comic series? Mike, what do you got?
I was not, as crazy as it sounds, I was not a comic book kid. I really wasn't.
What about cartoons? What was your favorite cartoon when you were younger? Transformers, G.I. Joe, even earlier?
No, I like G.I. Joe. You know, from a cartoon standpoint, I watched G.I. Joe religiously.
Yeah, me too. I loved it.
Nice.
There on WUTV channel 29.
Channel 29. That was also where you got the best wrestling.
Yeah, it's true. All the best stuff came from Buffalo. Surprisingly, how things have changed. But no, I wasn't much of a comic kid, and I feel I feel bad that I missed out on some really good stuff. But that's the wonders of the internet. Like I said, I saw the reference to Avengers 116 and 117. You just have to type in Avengers 116 and boom, it's on the internet. So
Free Comics Online, that's what it's called. Well, if you go to freecomicsonline.com, there's like tons.
Yeah, so it's kind of neat to sort of go back and especially with the whole Marvel universe, the cinematic universe, and go back and see some of these stories like the Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, you should read that, Mike. It's really, if you haven't, you can see the real comparisons, especially with Nebula and stuff like that, right? And just some small little twists. It's cool.
Yeah, Nebula. I'm sorry, but that is probably one of my favorite characters of the whole.
She's awesome.
Sort of, and what's her name?
Gamora?
Karen Gillan. Karen Gillan, is that her? She was one of the Doctor Who's, wasn't she?
Oh.
I'm pretty sure she was.
I'm not a Doctor Who fan.
I'm not a huge guy. Okay, but apparently she was one of the Doctor Who's, and I thought she's fantastic, and I had not seen any of her other work prior to Guardians.
Very minor character, buddy. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, bam, one of my faves. Her and
you
Drax.
can get into the stuff you just brought up there. We could get into. For us Ontario kids, get into what we grew up on, and like there was the Doctor Who into the old Spider-Man, and Hilarious House of Frankenstein. They were all happening within the time. Anyways, Chris is way older than us, so he's got a few more of those, but we can get
that. That's an idea for a podcast that's in the hopper.
That's right. We'll get to that. Now we're gonna go to Buffalo 29 for a minute, JJ. Chris has got some wrestling questions for Mike.
Okay.
How's your time, JJ? You all right here?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Good.
Let's do this. All right.
Too many. Like these ones, Mike. Yeah, wrestling. There we go. I heard a sound effect. So, Mike, I just need you to pick one of these two. Are you ready, Mike?
Okay.
Ultimate Warrior or Macho Man?
Oh, come on. Not even close.
I don't know.
Yeah, cup of coffee.
Man. JJ, what would you say?
Cup of coffee right there.
Macho Man.
Yeah, I would too. You never know, man. Some people are. Brent?
Oh, Macho, all the way, man.
Okay. Here's a good one, I think, anyway.
And hey, tying into the whole, Marvel's, not so much Marvel at that point, Fox, but he was in wasn't he in X-Men? No.
Oh, he was in Spider-Man 1.
Macho Man was in the original Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's right. Spider-Man 1. That's
the wrestler. He was the pusher. All right, so here's a good one. I like this one. This is pretty. Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan? Start with Mike.
Oof.
It's almost like you have to abolish one of, you keep one and the other one. You keep one. No, you pick one you want to keep, and the other one is going to be thrown away.
Without question, it'll be Ric Flair.
Okay. JJ?
Ric Flair, I will keep. When I was in, where we were in Miami, in 2012 for WrestleMania. And that was the night that Edge was inducted into the Hall of Fame. So they had the after party in it was the Intercontinental Hotel in Miami. And right by the lobby, there's like a little restaurant bar, and that's where they had the after Hall of Fame party. And I got to meet Rick. I got to sit down with Rick. He told me a crazy story from when he was a kid, and his daughter Charlotte was sitting there listening to this story of how when Rick was running wild with the Four Horsemen and his wife at the time was ready to split with Charlotte, he drove with his manager at the time, J.J. Dillon, and went in to grab Charlotte before she got taken away by her mom, and wound up falling asleep because he was drunk in her room, and JJ fell asleep at the wheel of the car out in the driveway. It was this crazy, and poor Charlotte is sitting there listening like, oh my God, Dad, I can't believe
just to relive it, right?
But Rick was hilarious. Like Rick is exactly what you expect. Like what you see on TV, that's him dialed up.
Off, huh? He's on all the time.
He's like a super, super nice. But we sat there and it was
cocaine is a hell of a drug.
I was sitting there with do you guys know who Arda Okal is?
Yeah.
He worked at Sportsnet. He's with ESPN in New York now. Him and I were sitting there, and Adam's cousin Matt was coming to join us. And Rick, all of us, guys, this is private. Just could you? And he's like, I'm Adam's cousin. He's like, oh, hey, no, but he was really like, if you come into a circle, he welcomes you in. You don't kind of sort of step into it.
Right.
He was such a cool dude. Adam's mom, who passed away a couple of years ago, she was there. We stayed at the bar till 5:30 in the morning because her thing was, we got to outlast Ric Flair.
Wow.
And we did. We watched Ric Flair go to bed at 5:30. He gets up, walks out of the bar, and he's like, that's it, kids. Nate is going to bed. And there were still people sitting in the lobby that were waiting for autographs. And they had kids like sleeping on this. He's like, guys, take your kids home. But Ric Flair, hands down.
All
Hulk
right.
Hogan,
JJ.
he lost me in the last couple of years for his stuff.
Paying for it too. JJ, what are you saying, buddy?
Yeah. So, I'm sorry to say, but Hulk Hogan.
All right, Hulk Hogan. Everybody's
After all that, Ric Flair just always, I don't know, it was too much. Although you could say they're both too much, but I'm a kid from the 70s and 80s, and Hulk Hogan's, eat your vitamins and that whole thing. Whatever.
What you gonna do, brother?
All that.
There you go.
All that. I bought into it.
Brent?
So I'm Flair, but I have to ask the question to the panel for a minute. I was showing my little guy some old Macho Man stuff and all the rest of it. And if you look at Hogan's reputation, obviously now, as you're saying, Mike, over the years, especially over the years, but what would the scene look like right now without him? So if Hogan didn't drop the leg drop on the Sheik, they didn't decide to make him the champion and turn it into the All-American thing and everything that was going on at that time, who was it going to be, and who would have taken the WWF to where it is in order to produce everything that we're seeing now? Because let's be honest, as much as I love NWA and that time frame, I mean, that rise of the WWF in that time, and to JJ's point about Hogan's larger than life, because until I started cheering, when did I start cheering for the bad guys? Not till 90s like everyone else. But at that point, when Macho Man won the belt, that was like, this is the first guy. This is the first guy since I've watched wrestling that's been the champion, other than the fake little Andre thing.
Right.
I'm like, where would it have gone without him? And I know that debate goes on forever and ever and ever. But would Flair have gotten it there? If Vince would have snagged Flair somehow and built his company around that at the time, would it have been the same? That's my question about it. But I am going to go Flair strictly from the standpoint of I think every single wrestler on the planet acknowledges that's the epitome of it. But my question, and I'll give this to Mike for a minute, where would it have gone if they didn't decide to go with Hogan?
There's no question. Hulk Hogan at the time was the meal ticket. That
Not
was
just the time, Mike. Even when he turned, he became bigger.
Yeah, well, okay. NWO aside, let's go back 1983.
Yeah.
You know, the whole Chic thing. Bob Backlund was supposed to be the guy.
Sure.
Jimmy Snuka, surprisingly enough, was also supposed to be the guy.
In between killing his wife.
Whoa, watch Beyond that on that. Buddy.
Watch Dark Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring, that's it. Holy.
But
Okay,
Hulk Hogan
this is all news to me. Holy shit!
JJ, you gotta watch Dark Side of the Ring.
That's another episode. Keep going,
All
Mike.
right, sorry, Mike.
Hulk Hogan, with his appearance in Rocky 3,
Right.
followed by that crossover with Mr. T and WrestleMania. Like that was, that's the perfect storm. Without Hulk Hogan, do you have that boom in the 80s? Probably not then. I still think you probably would have gotten it at some point from somebody else. Maybe not as big. Sergeant Slaughter, surprisingly, at the time was crossing over with the G.I. Joe thing. I think there was an issue though with money, with Vince and the licensing rights and sort of the. I think there was something there too, but without Hulk at that time, no, I don't think you see it boom as much as it did. When Hulk, the whole NWO thing, that's a whole other ball of wax. The body of work, Hulk Hogan now versus Hulk Hogan then, it's like
and Backlund didn't. I saw a thing where Backlund he didn't want to lose the title. Backlund didn't want to lose the title to Hogan as well, I guess, right?
It was a different time.
Well, I'm just saying. So he all right, I'll lose to the Sheik, and then he lost to the Sheik, and then they could bring Hogan in, right?
Well, there's it's the folklore of, did Backlund know that Arnold Skolland was going to throw in the towel, and was that the original screw job? Who knows?
Yeah.
But my issue with Hulk Hogan is I loved Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan now, you know, it's tough to love Hulk Hogan in sort of the light that he's painted himself over the last couple of years. And all
your idols will disappoint you?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, especially if they were from the 70s and 80s, because I loved Archie Bunker, but no, I'm kidding.
Awesome. So, but anyways, Flair for me, but Hogan, undeniable. I mean, you put Hogan in, or you put Flair in that role of Hogan, possibly because of his ability.
And he was the inspiration for a lot of the guys and girls that have come since. So,
okay, so I got a follow-up question to that one, Mike. So, are we ever going to see anybody else to the height of a Hulk Hogan? And if so, do you got 3 guys maybe that could possibly do it in our rosters today?
I think this is the problem right now that Vince McMahon is realizing very quickly, is that they don't have a Rock. They don't have a John Cena. They don't have a Hulk Hogan. Roman Reigns was probably the closest thing that I think they've had.
He's third generation wrestler?
1, 2, I think so. Yeah, third. I don't know if wrestling is going to have another big name like a Hulk Hogan or a Cena, because I don't necessarily think that the number of eyes are on there, and the interest, I don't think it's there as much. I think what you're getting now is the hardcore fans and sort of the blips. You get the Chris Jerichos, you get the Mike, the Miz, Mike Mizanin. Yeah. You get these small sort of things, and I think that's the problem with Vince right now, is that he doesn't have that marquee name, that crossover name that everybody, whether you're into wrestling or whether you're into movies, there's not that draw, which is why he tends to keep going back to the well and bringing guys like Goldberg back and The Rock.
So I was hoping that Sasha Banks was going to get a main character in, and then I thought, because then she'd go on to do her own thing. I thought maybe she could be like the new, like a female version of Hulk Hogan, right? Where she's doing all these really cool things. I find her very intriguing. I really like her in putting the wrestling moves in there, and I think she's an amazing wrestler. And I haven't really seen much of her acting chops, so I don't know.
Ronda Rousey probably would have been the closest thing that Vince would have had she stuck around.
Yeah, but I think that was big, Mike? Like when she was in there, that was big, huh?
But yeah, I think that's the problem. And again, discussion for a whole other day is why is AEW sort of weighing heavier than WWE these days?
Right.
I think it's because AEW is focused on wrestling and just the business of wrestling, whereas Vince is just begging and hoping for another Stone Cold Steve Austin to click, and I don't see it there. I don't not right now anyway.
Right.
So
Right. All right. Those are my. That's what I had. Yeah.
wrestling nerd.
And it's tough too because you look at the momentum things too, right? So like a lot of those things that came out of that time period. So Hogan's rise was a time, and then out of Hogan, Austin was a time, and then that led to the personality side of it taking over with the Rock. Cena was a slow build, and then became that sort of like go-to. I honestly, I know that they're like the big guys. I thought they were on a roll with Daniel Bryan, and then he got injured, and that took the momentum out. I also think that the Punk thing could have been a big thing if that would have worked out better. And then in today's current state, you know what? It was interesting, Mike, because Reigns was getting booed out of the building. Then he announced cancer, and everyone was like, all right, time to get serious here. We're sorry to hear that. And then he went away, and then he came back, said I'm cancer free, and then became the biggest face in the company. And I'm like, oh, maybe, unfortunately, out of that, but maybe this will be it. And then all this stuff kind of happened with I think COVID took a lot of wind out of a lot of sales, and then so now they've almost got to start over, and it's a good opportunity to find someone to take over for the next 10 years.
But
is it going to come from AEW into WWE? Is it going to be somebody from TNA that people are like, whoa, this guy is going to become a giant star?
I think it's like anything. Look at a guy like The Rock. He's got the it factor, if you want to call it that. He's got it. There's something about him that you just knew was going to be big. Hulk Hogan, same thing. Like there was just something there. I don't necessarily think there's anything there right now. There are guys that could probably do it. Some females that could do the crossover as well. I don't know if the time that we're in now, it's going to be as easy to find the next person to take that sort of leap from just being one of the pack to being this crossover superstar type thing. John Cena, he's going to be in the new Suicide Squad. Right. Maybe that brings some eyes back onto it. I doubt it. I think wrestling is going through that sort of kind of we're sort of here now. It dropped off. AEW, Tony Khan and what he's doing there, I think they got the right idea. Whether or not it's going to last, because there's got to be some sort of, the WWE isn't where it is without Vince McMahon being at the top of the food chain and basically being the ultimate. He's the last answer in the chain.
How do you figure sorry. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
How do you figure the UFC factors into where the WWE is at this point?
I don't know if I mean UFC again. It's in a position now where they don't have a George St. Pierre.
Yeah,
they don't have. Conor McGregor is probably the biggest draw, and Conor isn't really much of a draw anymore outside of fighting Jake Paul or Floyd Mayweather.
He's got some fight coming up, I think.
I think it's just
2 weeks.
Right.
I don't know if UFC has got the same sort of hold as it did a couple of years ago. But again, let's look at the situation we're in now. COVID. Yeah. UFC in an empty arena is not like watching UFC with 30,000 people.
It's true.
Going crazy, screaming. You can pipe in as much fake noise as you want.
McGregor loves the audience, man.
So maybe when things go back to normal,
the fans will decide who that is. If you go back to a year ago of where we were, you had two things that happened at the Royal Rumble that would have completely changed this year. God, yeah. We had the return of your friend Adam, that completely was one of the biggest pops in the history of the business of a guy coming back from I don't know if you saw it, JJ, but a guy coming back from a complete and utter
spinal stenosis.
Spinal stenosis, and,
Oh, wow.
and being out of the business for almost 10 years to coming back to the biggest pop. And then you had Drew McIntyre kick Brock Lesnar out of the Royal Rumble in one of the, probably the second biggest pop I've heard in the last 10 years. And so I'm like, there's two scenarios right there where you could have had Drew be the next guy. Adam carries the flag for the, for this, and helps build that middle division back up again, which would have been maybe created a brand new star. I think everyone's been so focused on pivoting on how to save the business over the last year that it just hasn't worked out, and the fans are going to decide in the end who they're going to get behind, and they just haven't been there. So standing by.
I will say that the next big renaissance change will be when Vince McMahon dies. That's when we'll see what happens next, because when he's gone, whoever takes over is going to decide the course of, I think, that industry. As much as, Tony Khan and AEW and those guys seem to have their vision of where it's going to go, I do think that once Vince McMahon is done, out, God rest his soul, that's when you're going to see whether or not wrestling sort of gets back to that upswing.
Kind of at that spot before
where it's water cooler.
It's at that spot before the Monday Night Wars was. Just before. It was lull. I stopped watching it for like 7 years. I was like, there's nothing here. And then everyone was watching.
The NWO became water cooler talk. For people, for the casual fan and for the person that had no clue, they knew what the NWO
Hulk Hogan's a bad guy? What are you telling me Hulk Hogan's a bad guy?
He's wearing black. More red.
We're at 90 minutes.
So
we're at 90 minutes.
We did it.
So, JJ.
Yes.
Listen, so that's, we'll wrap it up at 90 because we have so much more to cover down the road on a few more things. But parting shots, parting hot takes, whatever we want to do. JJ, thanks for joining us this week and joining the panel. So let's start with you, man. Any parting thoughts as we kind of go off air here today?
Just thank you for having me. It was a blast. I got my nerd fix on this evening. Went to some territory that I'm not huge into wrestling, but I found out some interesting stuff and stuff I'm definitely going to Google after this is done.
Beyond the Ring or Dark Side of the Mat, man. Wow.
Yeah. All right. I'll check those out for sure. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. If you have the time, you could check out my podcast, Unfiltered with JJ and Melanie, of course, over there on Blundell.com, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Wicked, buddy. It was good talking with you, my friend.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, come back anytime. We got lots of things ahead. Michael, hey, I mean, what are you up to, man? What's been going on?
You know what? I don't want to end this on too much of a down note. I'm going to share this. Hopefully this shows up here. I'm sharing this picture.
I saw your post. Yeah.
This is my buddy Brad. He's a voice actor friend of mine that I met about 8 years ago at a conference. He was doing a panel. It was a breakout panel on video game characters. And it was my first conference since I'd gone full-time voice acting and got to meet a whole bunch of these people. And I met Brad. He was an incredible talent back then. He was living in Texas. He had done he was working for a company called Funimation. They do a lot of Japanese dubs, English dubs of Japanese anime and stuff. He was supremely talented, had some confidence issues, but we knew he was going to make it someday. And finally, he made the move, I want to say 5 years ago, to LA with his wife, Katie. And he lived his dream, man. He has been in a ton of video games, a ton of animes. He was in the, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Attack on Titan?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's again, it was a feature film. He was in that as a character voice. Brad passed away this week. It's crushing. COVID related. He suffered a heart attack. He was a heart of gold, and it really crushed me because he was a part of a you call it like an accountability group of voice actors from that weekend that we met. There were 5 of us that sort of got together, and we had a group chat every week. We would rant. We would boost everybody. We would, leads and critiques and everything. So that hasn't been a week that's gone by that we haven't talked. I haven't seen Brad in person since I was in LA. I think it was 2017. So this was hard because we had just done a whole New Year's thread, sort of like, hey, fuck 2020, here it goes, 2021. Had no idea. So he was 43, which is way too young.
Wow.
But he leaves behind an incredible body of work. Everybody that's met him loved the guy. Another one of those guys that not a bad word could be said about him. And super talented. So if you get a chance, check out his IMDb. It's Brad Venable, Venable. See the stuff that he was in, and it's pretty amazing what he did. I will miss him dearly, but I'm so grateful that he was my buddy. So
sorry for your loss, buddy.
We're sorry for that, brother. And everyone listening and watching, stay tuned. What we'll do is we'll work with Mike to put together a little thing on behalf of Kids on the Escalator. We'll do a little. We'll put some links and a whole bunch of stuff to his body of work and get it out there.
But otherwise, man, that's it. I'm so psyched that you guys had JJ on today, man.
Hey!
It's very cool. And like I said at the top of the show, man, I am not doing this had it not been for you. So I am eternally grateful. And thanks, man.
You betcha.
Rad, boys.
There's a lot of credit that I don't deserve, but thank you.
Moving to Chris, let's get a Skeletron update for our
Patreon,
listeners at home.
Patreon,
Skeletron is out and taking over the internet.
The Patreon store is open, so go to patreon.com and put in Machete Comics, and woo!
Yeah.
You can get some video footage and some posters and a comic book and the hard copy of the comic book, which I'm getting a lot of messages from people. The diehard fans want the hard copy. We're discussing the digital copies and how easy it is to read them and stuff like that. And I'm selling those, but I'm getting a lot of people asking for the hard copy, which is cool. I know I get one maybe in a week here, and I get to kind of check it out. So wow, I'm really looking forward to that. Like my first comic book. Put it in the bag in the back of the board and sealed up and everything, but check it out. Make sure it's proper. And there's going to be some bonus pages in the hard copy as well. And issue 2 is right on schedule for February 1st release, and issue 3 is right on schedule for a March 1st release. So I'm on top of things. I got 3 issues ready to go. As I was talking to Joe today, man, I'm hoping to walk in the footsteps of The Walking Dead. That's what I'm proposing this after. One day, man. I sell this beast. But the cool thing about it is when you have a comic book online or whatever, it's like if they don't sell right away, 5 issues down the road, a bunch of people pick it up, then they got to buy the back issues, right? So it's such a great investment, and I love doing it. I'm more doing this just because I've wanted to do it all my life. Mike, as you know, buddy, next I got to be that wrestling manager, right? So
there you go.
Maybe you could put me. I don't know if the little folk wrestle anymore, but maybe I could be a manager there.
Hey, if you ever get down this way, I'm sure I can find. I've got some connections to some independent feds out here that I'm sure we could bring some Mr. Machete in.
I would love to manage a team, like even just for or a wrestling just for one time. That would be amazing.
Except you're not going anywhere in Ontario for months, so
I guess it'll come back. I know. See, and now I can go to these Comic Cons, right?
There you go.
Yeah, and the Comic Cons and the wrestling events. I'm missing all this. I could have a Comic Con booth, at the Fan Expo and everything, and I'm sure Dean could get me a pass to do all this cool stuff, and now I can't do it. It'll come around again, folks. We just got to be good for a while. You know what I mean? Like Mike's got a perfect example there. Why you keep your mask on? Do what you do. Like don't screw other people over, man. If you're gonna be a douche about it, just douche it up in your own home. Have some respect for other people, right?
I want a T-shirt that says just douche it up in your own home.
Douche it up in your own home. Yeah, I like that one. All right.
Friends on Tour podcast returns in early February with the Journey for Java.
Yay!
Let's
find coffee.
More coffee, more coffee.
How do you sleep? Like if you drink as much coffee, how do you sleep, dude?
How do you sleep? You never sleep. What are you talking about?
I do sleep, but I smoke medical marijuana that calms me down because I have ADD, right? Like as you can tell, I talk
Caffeine
a lot.
doesn't bother me.
But no, I have medical marijuana that calms me down and helps me sleep, or else I wouldn't sleep. I'd just be talking about Star Wars in my sleep and Marvel comics and drawing on the walls and air guitaring Van Halen, driving my wife nuts.
I got that. I'm fine. The caffeine doesn't bother me like that.
I get jacked on
Ready
caffeine.
for Java coming soon. All right, a couple of thanks. Number one, JJ, Mike, thank you guys for joining us this week again.
Yeah, thanks,
Awesome.
buddy. It's good to see you here.
Come on anytime. We got a bunch of stuff coming up. We've got the It Came From the Basement segment coming up, where we're going to be bringing out old toys, which is rad.
Well, the long boxes. We should get your comic books out, and I can help. And I can just like, it'd be fun because I can be like, nope. Ooh, put that one aside. You know what I mean? That'd be cool, dude.
Dude, we can Zoom chat after this. We can do that, man. Don't need a
We do a
podcast
card.
for that.
We do they have card breaks, but we'll do a comic break where you guys can go through that.
Do you still have your Star Wars toys, JJ?
I do.
Oh, there you go.
A lot.
Wow, I'd like to see that too.
That's going to be fun.
So I guess that's coming up. I think we're going to try to do this next week or the week after. So there's that. We have an 80s wrestling show. Tons of
and we got
stuff
Chuck from I'm Other Earth. He's the bass player
I'm
for
Other
I'm
Earth and
Other
the
Earth.
Salads. He's coming up. Yeah, we got a whole bunch of stuff
Yeah.
coming up there. And then big thanks to Dean Blundell and the Dean Blundell Network for hosting us over there. You can find us, Kids on the Escalator, on all the things with the stuff. If you're listening to a podcast, then you know where to find podcasts, so you can find us there. Lonnie, our producer, there beside Chris, who's sitting over there, tells us that we have merchandise now.
Yeah.
So for $100, you can get a shirt, which is great. These cups are now for sale for $79.99. We got all of them.
What is an actual price on a T-shirt?
I think they're like $15 or something like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there. You can check it out on the merch side. But
hoodie. Okay, hoodies are. We got hoodies now too, Brent. We just got hoodies. $35 for a hoodie. Okay.
Is that the one with Mike's face on the front?
That's reasonable.
We got those ones done, right?
Oh, Mike's is on the back on this one.
That's right. Once you appear on the show, you get to come on the merch. So JJ, we'll have a hat coming. Yeah.
JJ's gonna be down the sleeve.
Thanks everybody. This has been Kids on the Escalator podcast. See us next week. I think we're going Tuesdays now. Yeah. So join us on all the things. And JJ, Mike, thanks fellas.
Nice.
Good times, rad dudes.
You gotta be fresh.
All right, fellas. Thanks, eh?
All right. We out? Nope.
And there we go. Awesome. Thanks.
Times.
That was fun.
Thank you, fellas. It was dynamite. Thank you so much for having me. That was the thrill of my week.